"Find Ghost," the Admiral ordered. Everyone froze when the rookie nurse answered, "I'm here." She was just the quiet nurse on the night shift. Nobody looked twice at her. That was the point. For 6 years, she had made herself small. Small enough to disappear inside a hospital hallway. Small enough that no one asked why her hands never shook, even when the machines screamed. Nobody knew that Maya Coleman used to have a different name. Nobody knew what she had done with it. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday, a wounded man was wheeled through the emergency doors, bleeding out on a gurney, and he opened his eyes just long enough to whisper one word. A word that only she should have recognized. The room didn't understand what it meant. She did. And in that instant, everything she had buried for 6 years cracked open at the seams. Hey, before we go further, welcome to Silent Heroes. If stories about quiet people carrying extraordinary pasts hit you right in the chest, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and take a guess. What do you think that one word meant? Now back to Maya. Riverside General sat on the edge of a mid-sized city, the kind of hospital that saw car wrecks and heart attacks, not war. Maya worked the overnight rotation in the ER, the shift nobody wanted. She kept her hair pulled back, tight and plain. She wore no jewelry. Her scrubs were always a size too big, swallowing a frame that moved with a precision most people never noticed. If they had looked closer, they might have seen it. The faint scar along her collarbone, shaped like a lightning bolt. The calluses on her palms that didn't match a decade of paperwork and 4 lines. The way her eyes swept a room in half a second, cataloging exits, cataloging threats, before she ever looked at a patient's chart. She had learned the fastest way to survive was to make herself small. Small didn't get questioned. Small didn't get remembered. Small didn't get found. Dr. Russell Hale ran the ER like it was his personal kingdom. Tall, silver-templed, always the loudest voice in any room he entered, he had built a career on charm and confident diagnoses that other people quietly corrected behind his back. He liked an audience. He liked being right in front of one even more. Coleman. He said her name the way some men said an insult. "Try not to touch anything you don't understand tonight." It was a line he used often. The nurses had heard it so many times they didn't flinch anymore. Maya didn't flinch either. She just lowered her eyes, the same practice tell she used every single time, shoulders in, gaze down, voice soft, and let him have the room. There was only one person who ever noticed something didn't add up. His name was Walter Briggs, a retired mechanic with a bad hip and a habit of showing up in the ER every few months for reasons that were never quite emergencies. He liked the coffee in the waiting room. He liked Maya more. "You don't move like a nurse," he told her once, squinting up from his wheelchair while she checked his blood pressure. "You move like someone who's used to people shooting at her." Maya had laughed it off. Too many cop shows, Walter. But he hadn't laughed. He just watched her, steady and certain, like a man who already knew the answer and was only waiting for her to admit it. She never did. Not that night. It happened at 4:47 in the morning, the dead hour when the ER was nearly empty and the fluorescent lights hummed like something about to give out. The ambulance bay doors burst open. 2 paramedics rushed in with a gurney, shouting vitals, blood soaking through a field dressing wrapped hastily around a man's abdomen. Multiple gunshot wounds. Pressure dropping. Pulse thready and climbing past 140. "Move, move, move." Hale barked, striding in like he owned the chaos, already calling for a treatment that made no sense for the wound pattern in front of him. Maya's eyes went straight to the man's face, and then to the tattoo on his forearm. Small, faded, easy to miss unless you knew exactly what you were looking for. A compass rose wrapped around a single Latin word. Something inside her went very still. Hale was already reaching for a chest tube kit, calling for attention pneumothorax decompression on the wrong side of the body. Classic mistake. Under pressure, some doctors froze on left-right orientation, especially with blood obscuring landmarks and a shouting room stealing focus. It would have collapsed the man's one good lung. Wrong side, Maya said. Nobody heard her over the noise. The wounded man's eyes fluttered open. Cracked lips moved. A single, broken word slipped out, barely audible, meant for no one in that room but her. Ghost. The word hit the room like a detonation. Maya's hands, which had trembled slightly for 6 straight years, a tremor so small only she ever noticed it, went suddenly, completely still. What did you say? Hale demanded, whipping around. What did he just call you? Maya said nothing. But for the first time in 6 years, she didn't lower her eyes. For a full 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then instinct took over, and it wasn't Hale's. Maya stepped forward, her voice suddenly low and clipped, stripped of every soft edge she'd worn for 6 years. Chest tube, second intercostal space, right side. He's got a tension pneumo on the right, not the left. Listen to the breath sounds. They're absent on the right, not diminished on the left. You're about to collapse his only working lung. Hale froze, kit still in hand. I don't take orders from a night nurse. Then take them from someone who's done this in worse rooms than this one, Maya said, and pushed past him. Her hands didn't shake. Not once. She palpated the space between the second and third ribs, found her landmark, and drove the needle in with a speed and certainty that belonged to someone who had done this 100 times, under fire, with far less light. A rush of air hissed out. The monitor's shriek dropped from a scream to a steady, survivable rhythm. For anyone watching, tension pneumothorax is a real and immediate killer. Air trapped in the chest cavity builds pressure, collapses the lung, and eventually crushes the heart and major vessels if it isn't relieved within minutes. Getting the side right isn't a technicality. It's the difference between saving a life and ending one. The room stared. A nurse beside her actually took a step back. Hale's face had gone pale, then furious. Who are you? Maya didn't answer. She was already moving to close the entry wound, calling for 2 units of O-negative, her voice steady, commanding, nothing like the woman who'd spent 6 years apologizing for existing. By 6 o'clock that morning, Hale had his revenge. Effective immediately, Nurse Coleman is suspended pending investigation, he announced to the charge nurse, loud enough for the whole station to hear. Unauthorized procedures. Insubordination. I want her out of this building. Maya untied her scrub top with steady hands and set it on the counter. No, she said. I am just done hiding. She stayed anyway, working the bedside of the man who now had a name tag reading John Doe and a security detail forming a loose, watchful ring around his room. A small crowd of staff had gathered by then, murmuring, watching Hale's face turn from red to something closer to fear. 2 hours later, 3 men in dark suits walked through the ER doors like they'd done it 1,000 times before. At the front was a broad-shouldered man in his 60s, silver crew cut, a chest full of ribbons under his coat that told their own story before he said a word. Where is she? He said. Not a question. Walter Briggs, still parked in his wheelchair by the coffee station, smiled like a man who'd been right all along. The officer stopped in front of Maya and, in front of Hale, in front of the gathered staff, said her real name for the first time in 6 years. Then he read it. The decorations, the classified operations, the Medal for Valor she'd never once mentioned, the call sign Ghost, earned after she'd pulled 3 wounded men out of a collapsed field hospital under enemy fire. Hale's mouth opened and closed. She never disclosed any of this. That's a violation of hospital policy. She disclosed exactly as much as her country allowed her to, the officer said flatly. You suspended a decorated combat medic for saving a man's life correctly. I'd be more careful with my next sentence, Doctor. Hale had nothing left. I was following protocol, he said weakly, and even he didn't sound like he believed it. The wounded man was one of her own, an old teammate working deep cover, shot by men connected to a trafficking ring Hale had been quietly, financially entangled with for over a year, laundering payments through falsified clinical trial paperwork. The forged documents were already in an investigator's hands. Hale's license, and his freedom, wouldn't survive the week. That night, the same men returned to finish what they'd started. One slipped past security in scrubs, syringe hidden in his sleeve, heading straight for the patient's room. Maya was already there, waiting in the dark. What followed was fast, and it was quiet, the kind of quiet only someone trained for it could manage. A wrist twisted, a weapon disarmed, a voice in her ear, from 6 years and 1 war ago, saying her old name one last time before she pinned the man to the floor and called for security. "Vitals," she said afterward, kneeling back at her friend's bedside, voice steady even as her chest ached with an old, familiar grief, the ghost of a teammate she hadn't saved, all those years ago. Pressures holding. Pulse 92. Sats 98. Her friend's hand found hers. "Told you," he rasped, "you'd still have it." "Got it," she whispered. "He has a chance." Hale was arrested within the week. His license was revoked. The hospital opened an internal review that ended with 3 resignations and a new set of protocols quietly named after the night everything changed. Maya was reinstated, then promoted, given the chance to build something new, a trauma response unit that trained nurses in combat-level emergency care, blending both of her lives instead of burying one of them. Walter Briggs was there on opening day, grinning from his wheelchair. "Told you," he said. "You never moved like a nurse." Maya smiled, and for the first time in a very long while, she let her eyes meet his without looking away. Some people spend years making themselves invisible, believing smallness is the price of safety. But hiding who you are doesn't protect you, it just delays the moment the truth finds you anyway. The bravest thing Maya ever did wasn't the rescue. It was staying seen. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe to Silent Heroes, and tell us in the comments, what would you have done in that ER at 4:47 in the morning? The next story is already waiting. The end.